Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the program. I'm trying to modulate my voice. It's October 15th, even though my car says it's October 14th. I keep trying to fix that, but what the hell. Anyway, it being a Tuesday, which it is, my sister is joining us, and hopefully she sounds better than I do. Susan.
Boy,
Yeah?
your voice is now lower than mine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, sister. You sound like, excuse the expression, shit.
Yeah, whatever this is, it likes me, because it's going on a week now. On Thursday, it'll be like a week. So, God. Anyway, so here I am, and here you are. Yeah. Bummer. Always a bummer. You know, when you get sick, when you're not feeling right, you can't remember what it was like to feel right? You just, and I don't know, I find myself looking enviously at people who are, like, crossing the street in front of me and thinking, you feel right. Yeah. Anyway, Jesus. So, and it's not.
Okay, well, you're pretty pitiful.
I'm
Hey.
sorry. Okay, well, let's pick it up. Let's not. I don't know anything specifically. Making you go crazy.
Well, I mean, okay. Let me just say that I have a house full of company, so I haven't been spending a lot of time watching news or reading news.
Lucky you.
But I did just quickly peruse the newspapers, and two things popped out at me. One was John Bolton, who I do not believe ever in my life I have thought I agree with him.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it turns out that Bolton was the cooler head trying to prevail in the White House.
You believe that? That now,
and saying that Rudy Giuliani is a loose cannon and running a separate foreign policy and it needs to be stopped and blah blah blah, and that's why Bolton leaves. I am amazed.
Well, what we need is like Bolton testifying. We need all these other guys who have decamped, right, to tell us just how bad things are and how, in fact, probably criminal on a daily basis. The fact that Giuliani was essentially performing the functions of Secretary of State, although he holds no public office, is amazing. And then there's the question of who's paying him.
Nobody. He's theoretically working pro bono, but I'm sure he's got a deal of all these side deals that he's working. I mean, this is just Trump business. He's just doing Trump business.
Well, it's criminal.
It's absolutely
criminal,
shocking. And then at the same time there's a story of his third wife, who's now divorcing him. Do you remember when he was America's mayor, when he moved her into the mayor's mansion? He was still married to wife two?
Was that wife two Donna Hanover?
Wife two was Donna Hanover.
Oh, I didn't know there was one before her. Okay.
And this is wife three, and now she's divorcing him, and part of her issue is that she's claiming that he's hiding tons of money while claiming to work pro bono for the White House all these years.
Well, didn't I read something the other day about $500,000 in an envelope that had to do with these two Saturday Night Live clowns that got picked up at the airport? You know what? You can't make it up. Did you see that those
guys? You can't make it up.
The guys who are under
those two goons.
I know, and not only that, did you see Giuliani was helping him as an attorney with their new business venture, which was something about fraud security or something. I mean, you can't make it.
Well, they're experts at it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like you hire a hacker so that you don't get hacked. Well, you hire a expert in fraud. This is just—it's so amazing. And then you throw in that Barr is in at Notre Dame talking about how the problem with morality in the United States is, there's no morality in government. And I'm going, well, gee, A.G. Barr, I agree with you. And why do you think that is? And, of course, the answer would be your boss. But no, he thinks it's an absence of religion in our government, and in particular, his religion in our government.
You know what? I have to say, I'm a Jeopardy fanatic, and last night I had it on, but I was sort of not into it much, and there was a question. It was about treaties that the United States had signed, and I swear to God, they were quoting from treaties, and one of them might have had to do with Tripoli. And maybe in the 1700s, and I swear to God, the quote from the treaty was something like, "The United States is not a Christian nation." I'm not kidding. It was like in a frigging treaty.
Right.
What? Well, so does our illustrious Attorney General not know American history? The founding fathers, who were still around when that treaty was made, flat out had to tell the Maharaja at the time, I think this had to do with pirates in the Mediterranean, I'm not sure. But yeah, that somehow was telling him, hey, this is not a Christian nation. We're not crusaders, or whatever the point was. Just flat out
but
there.
I try and read these things trying to figure out where the person's head is when they're saying this. And I'm thinking, well, he knows his audience. He's at a Catholic university. He's discussing issues in such a way that he thinks the audience would approve of. But you can't say things that don't work. You can't say we need more religion in a government of a country where that is explicitly forbidden.
Yeah. And that this is, we're talking about the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, Bill Barr, who more than any person should certainly be aware of the constitutional bedrock of the country. So Barr, of all people, to go to a religious institution and give a speech essentially blaming, what he called militant secularists.
Yeah, militant secularism.
What is that? I think is that you?
That's people who don't believe in God walking around with rifles. I see that all the time, don't you?
No. No. But he said
what does that mean?
Susan, he actually said we are here intent on destroying the traditional moral order. And he went on to blame us for mental illness, for drug dependency, and for violence. He's deranged.
Yeah, he is deranged, and I don't know. I'm getting tired of it. I think the only bedrock that this country was built on, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it's true. The strongest bedrock that this country is built on is racism.
Whoa. I didn't know you were going there. Well, I can't help it. That's the only thing that we can't seems to just sit there at the bottom of everything else. Everything else.
And I mean, I read in Missouri about that guy in a chair for 5 days in a police department.
Wait a minute. No, this is one I don't know. I thought I was reading something else about your wonderful former state.
In Missouri, there is currently a lawsuit being brought against a small town in rural Missouri where a man you can guess his race, was arrested for a DUI and was lashed to a chair for 5 days with a bag over his head for most of it, not released to go to the bathroom, not released for any reason, was force-fed water and food, and then left to defecate and sit there for 5 days. He couldn't walk for 3 days when they let him go. He's now suing, and I'm thinking he's suing. Those people should be in jail. That's not a civil wrong. That's a criminal wrong.
It's like kidnapping. It's like
it's illegal restraint. It's torture.
Right.
It's kidnapping. It's a total abuse of every constitutional right. This guy clearly was not allowed to see a lawyer or put before a judge or anything. He was just kidnapped.
You know, what did I?
But I don't know. It's just this constant stuff. You know, this cop who I actually feel sorry for that killed this woman in her own house at 2:00.
How do you feel sorry for that cop? Seriously.
Because I think that we've got cops that are so damaged that with no treatment, with no awareness, without any help for what they're doing, because they are just constantly
shooting
killing
black people.
They have to be in mortal fear to be pulling that trigger.
The wonderful police officers of Fort Worth, Texas, have already just since June. Okay.
How many have we charged with murder?
Since June, just one. Since June, they've shot and killed 6 people. As far as I know, none have been charged with murder. This guy has, somewhat belatedly. Can you
been charged with murder?
How many black people enjoying the comfort of their domestic lives in their own homes
at 2:00 in the morning playing a video game with their nephew? And the poor neighbor who is worried.
Was worried because he saw the front door open, so he called the cops.
Right, and sends a wellness call in, who now feels responsible for the death of the woman that he was worried about.
I know. It's
not like I believe that the cops are to shoot. I don't. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we clearly have a situation where we are not in a place where we can discuss the emotional toll that being a police officer is taking. They clearly are not doing what they have to do in order to get the right people on a force.
Let me just say that I think the way police departments hire is they give a special, a leg up to veterans. And veterans are much more inclined to maybe be coming in with undiagnosed post-traumatic stress, and maybe should be the last people to be considered for police work. I don't know.
Well, and then that is true. And again, I'll cite another case, and again out of St. Louis. But there was 2 cops. There were actually 3 cops involved in the original incident, all on duty, and they meet at some house, and they're just drinking and fooling around while they're supposed to be patrolling. But anyway, the woman ends up dead from a good old game of Russian roulette.
The woman cop.
Yeah. With 2 male cops.
Yeah.
And then it comes out that the male cop that is the one with the gun, ends up being a guy that apparently liked to play this game a lot with his girlfriends, and they are all ex-military. And you're beginning to think, these are the people that we're thinking are the right people to be on the street? But, they're also the people that are attracted to do the job.
Well, I think we obviously have a big problem And
we have
the
a
police,
really big problem.
Yeah, and I think obviously the wrong kinds of when you see, and they all say the same thing. I feared for my life. I mean, do they fear for their life?
Well, that's what you're. Of course they
That's
did.
what they have to say. But every time, if it had been a white woman walking around in her house, would he have feared for her life? Going back to your no.
Going back to my original point.
No. So.
Although when I say that, I remind myself of that South African blonde woman who called, and she was blown away.
Yeah, but by a black cop.
Now, turnabout,
I know. Wasn't that amazing? I think every once in a while they throw one of those in just to give us...
Just to screw up the statistics.
Right.
I know.
Meanwhile, another cop yesterday was acquitted, oh, shocker, of murder. And this was a case that happened a few years ago, and of course involves a black man, unarmed, who he shot because he was in fear of his life. The man he shot was a mentally ill veteran, 27-year-old Air Force veteran who had been traumatized by his experience in combat. He had PTSD. He'd also been diagnosed as bipolar. And he was outside of his apartment building, naked, and acting strangely, but not violently. And, of course, someone called the cops. And within, 3 seconds of the cop coming on the scene, that black man was dead. Even though he had said right before he was shot, "The police are my friends." The jury was composed of blacks and whites. A number of black jurors were sobbing when their decision was read. However, if this helps at all, they did not clear him on some lesser charges that some of which are pretty serious. Aggravated assault, violation of an officer's oath, breaching his department's use of force policy. So they didn't let him off totally, but they could not make him guilty of murder. And the jury broke down totally, Susan, on racial lines. The whites said he didn't murder him. The black said, hello. Yeah. So, I mean...
but it's also a problem how the case is prosecuted, because if in many cases this isn't an issue of murder where there is prior intent and all that, it is more accurately manslaughter. And sometimes if you overreach on the degree, you get acquitted.
Yeah. Right.
If they can't consider a lesser included offense. And I think these cases are more accurately manslaughter. And then because I don't think anybody goes into this, well, I won't say that. I think most people do not go into this wanting to kill someone. But no, I don't know that.
And then I read recently, do you remember the woman, I think this was the one from Missouri that I'm remembering, a woman police officer who shot and killed somebody about 6 years ago and said, of course, all the things you say, and was acquitted and was still on the force. Well, she shot a woman the other day and killed her again. A woman who had been charged with absolutely nothing, who was sitting on the steps and refused to jump when she said jump. She also alleged the woman had gone for her taser, which apparently police video or the taser itself showed could not have happened. This was a killer cop who had killed once and was allowed on the force to remain on
do
the
it
force,
again.
and is now killed again. And now this Missouri Police Department is saying, and I think we're going to go back and look at the first person. Yeah, my understanding is most police officers can serve on a force for, their career, a lifetime career.
And never draw their weapon.
Right. Never draw their weapon.
I think that's the more, normal way of things, depending on where you're policing. But it's complicated. It's just complicated, and we find ourselves in a situation where it's difficult to accurately name the problem, and if you can't accurately name the problem, then you can't accurately search for
a solution,
answers.
Yeah. Right.
And to say that we have a whole group of defenders in our country that need to be very carefully looked at and made sure that they are medically fit. And so this goes into a whole other thing where this country is crazed, and I use that
mental
term.
Illness.
Absolutely, mental illness.
Right.
And we don't accept that it's like insurance not covering your eyes and your feet, like they aren't part of your body. I've never gotten that. Well, who says that our heads aren't part of ourselves? And that when we're sick in the head, that's different than having a heart attack. It's not.
We are as a nation willfully ignorant, it seems. I just want to go back to Bill Barr, our great Attorney General, one more time, because you were talking about it. It made me think of it because you were talking about the intent with some of these shootings. That first-degree murder is often a case you can't make. That they don't go into it thinking I'm gonna kill whoever this is on the other end. But the Attorney General in his diatribe at Notre Dame said this about people like me. This is not decay. It is organized. No, this is not decay. It is organized destruction. He is saying that we are guilty of first degree of organizing to destroy the country.
As usual, that's just them pointing a finger at what they themselves are doing, except that they are disorganizing the country.
Right. Anyway, a guy, well, no, I guess this is Paul Krugman says, and if that kind of talk doesn't scare you, it should. It's the language of witch hunts, real witch hunts, and pogroms. The reality is, if they think somebody without religion is part of some organized cabal to take down the government, or people with the wrong religion, the reality is over 20% of Americans now say they do not affiliate in any way with a religion. He's talking about a fifth of the country, and probably more so.
Well, and I think it's probably even bigger than that. I mean, I know an awful lot of people that are tired of organized religion, that might still have a sort of spiritual self, but it's not around any organized religion.
Hey, given what we're talking about here, I've been meaning to do a heads up on a program that is at Carnegie Mellon University that is free, although you do have to register, and it's called Hate versus Understanding. And it is October 30th at a hate crime forum. It goes all day from 8:30 to 5, but the keynote speaker is Judy Shepard, who is the mother of Matthew Shepard,
right?
Who the gay young man who was tortured, butchered, crucified. She will be the keynote speaker, and also the chief of police in Charlottesville, Rochelle Brackney. Charlottesville, of course, were one of the horrific. I guess that's where Dylan Roof did his damage. Is that right? No, Charlottesville. You know what? I was thinking this today. I have long since lost track of the names of all of these black people who have been killed by, you know how we used
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember now. Was he the one? Was that in? And then I lose track of even the geography of it. Charlottesville.
Oh,
Was
yeah,
that the
there's just too many.
Was that? Are we talking about the white nationalists? Yeah, that's. I just it and because it's so rampant. Anyway, I wanted you guys to know that if that's something that interests you, and I'm sure there's panel discussions, lots of stuff, just check it out on probably the CMU website, okay? And that's October 30th. I had wanted to.
Yeah, we can't give up. We have to. I mean, I guess I'm just with the president that we have, who has opened this cauldron of evil, and it's spewing out its steam of crud over all of us. It just awakens me to everything else, you know. If you walk around happy, you don't notice all the crud. If you're walking around noticing crud anyway, you begin to notice all of it.
It's tough.
It's very tough. We really have to do better. We really have to want to do better. You know, so that, I mean, that gets us around to the presidential debate tonight. And we got Bernie and Biden still fighting up there. And a country that I think is getting increasingly worried that a girl can't win, which gets me,
That is just, that's like a contagion.
That just gets me so angry that I can barely breathe.
I think the repetition of that is so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But it's a drumbeat coming from men. That's who's writing all these articles. I don't see a woman writing an article that Elizabeth Warren can't win.
I don't know.
But out comes a poll that says most women our age think that are for Biden, and I don't know one.
Well, that doesn't mean that most women our age.
I know that
Biden.
doesn't mean anything, but I'm just saying I don't understand necessarily who's manufacturing this drumbeat for Biden.
Barbara has sent a quote from a man who gave a lecture here last night that I had a ticket to but did not feel well enough to go. Ibram X. Kendi. And he did the Carnegie lecture last night. And he said this: America's politics in my lifetime have been shaped by racist fear of black criminals, Muslim terrorists, and Latino immigrants. That's it. Our politics, certainly of late, is all about racism. Fears of black people, fears of Muslim people, fears of Latino people.
Oh, and then if you still have a little left over, you can throw in a Jew or two.
Oh, and gays. I mean, we can...
and trans. I mean, you just name it. Anybody that isn't,
So...
All right, well, I'm feeling better. I'm not the only one that feels this way then, apparently.
Well, no, of course not. He's written a book, by the way, called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And he's getting a lot of attention to how all of us can play an active role in trying to get a handle on this biggest problem, this huge, huge problem. Speaking of problems, I want to go. I do not know that I have ever seen a foreign policy disaster play out so quickly as did the Syria thing. 1 minute, the United States had a position in the Middle East, and the next minute, we don't. We are on the run. The Russians are already there. Vladimir Putin, this has happened in what, less than a week? Vladimir Putin.
Well, obviously not. I mean, obviously, our president was in cahoots with these people before that.
Vladimir Putin was wined and dined in Saudi Arabia yesterday. You want to know who the power there is now and totally has replaced the United States is us? Israel is warming up its relations with Russia because
because they're begging. They're going, let us save the Kurds.
No, that's not. Israel's concerned about its own.
Well, of course they are, but I mean,
because they now don't trust. How would they trust even Trump now? So there is fear in all of these countries that used to think
why
the
would
United
anyone
States
trust Trump ever about anything?
Ever. So what we
the
have,
arrogance
I
of
don't
fools
know,
that think that he wouldn't cheat them.
Are we
It's
paying
just
attention?
arrogant.
Because we've got about 1,000 American soldiers who have been told to retreat, and yet they are stuck right now, trapped. Do we realize this? Between Turkish troops who have cut off all the roads that they would escape on. And it could well be that to get our troops out, we're going to have to airlift them out, sort of like the scene when Saigon fell. That is how totally unprepared this was, because the president, and let me quote him, this is from a year ago, "My gut tells me more than anybody else's brains can ever tell me."
Mm-hmm.
And he went with his gut, and his gut is informed a lot by Vladimir Putin whispering in his ear, and in this case, Erdogan. And the funny thing is, how can anybody not see how bizarre it is that this president is now threatening sanctions on Turkey when he's the one who gave him the go-ahead to go do what he's making? I know. He says, go for it. Go for it. And now he's saying, well, you'll pay for that. This guy, I mean, to say that he's unfit for
and
office
as usual, it's too late, because we've lost all of these assets that we abandoned there, and the military is totally demoralized because of what has been done in their name.
Yeah.
You know, it's
May I talk
appalling.
about assets? I don't know if you're aware of this. People in the State Department and the Energy Department are going nuts because they're trying to figure out how they can evacuate not people, but 50 tactical nuclear weapons, which we are storing in Turkey.
Well, he doesn't know that. He doesn't
Trump?
know that.
Oh, I think someone's told him by now. The Turks
he knows it
have
now.
50 of our tactical nuclear weapons, and they are now essentially being held hostage by Erdogan. How do we get them out of there?
Well, who's in league with Putin? So now Putin's in control of our nuclear weapons. Let's be clear.
Here's some foreign policy experts saying, I think this is a first. Like every other day, it's a first. I think this is a first. A country with American nuclear weapons stationed in it, literally firing at U.S. forces. This is the president's great Middle East strategy.
He needs to be impeached yesterday,
Yeah.
and just plain old on grounds of treason.
Sure seems to be. I mean, it's hard to comprehend how everything he does, the thing with Ukraine, which does not benefit the United States in any way. It only benefits Vladimir Putin. The whole thing with Ukraine, keeping them from
Ukraine
getting...
is a burgeoning democracy whom we should be supporting.
Yeah, well, but it's a part of what used to be the Soviet Union, and Putin wants it back.
Well, it's got that nice coastline,
Yes, it does. And so we're helping. Trump was keeping the Ukrainians from the defensive weaponry that our Congress said they were willing to send them, and the president just stopped it because he thought, hey, I'm not just going to let this stuff go. And anyway, the more I stop it, the more Vladimir will be happy with me. But on top of it, I could maybe, I could shake him down to give me some dirt on Biden. And speaking of Biden, what the fuck is his son giving interviews for? How is that going to...
The son is like, apparently every presidential family has one, except in Trump's case, he was the one. But, like Clinton had Billy Clinton, and Biden's got this ne'er-do-well son.
Yeah.
Whose best idea is to profit off of his name. And if that used to be, that should be a perfectly legitimate thing to do, given the Trump kids, but no.
Every president has one. Donald Trump has, how many does he have? We'll give him 4, because Barron I'll let off the hook. Trump doesn't even remember he has a 5th son. But, yeah, right. Let's change the subject, Susan.
Okay.
I was reading a review of Bill Bryson's latest book called The Body, A Guide for Occupants. So it's a book that Bill Bryson is a wonderful writer, and he's so good at explaining scientific stuff in a, gotta turn the page manner. And he's getting very good reviews about it. Oh, here's a great quote. The church says the body is a sin. Advertising says the body is a business. The body says, I am a fiesta.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Your voice was so low that I didn't hear the quote. Can you do it one more time?
Okay, and I'll try to do it up here. The church says the body is a sin. Advertising says the body is a business.
It's a business.
Yeah. Think of all the stuff they sell us.
Yeah, I know.
Because
I feel like our mother, and when you're dropping your voice at the punchline of every sentence, and that's what I don't hear.
And the body itself says, I am a fiesta.
I am a fiesta. Okay.
All right. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I like that. So here's some of the things. And I love this because we've been talking about memory, you and I, at points. And Bryson makes clear that memory is a way our mind lies to us. Our memories are not engraved in stone, but they are hazy and they're mutable. And it is so clear. And that is why, eyewitness testimony is just known to be a bunch of crap. That a whole bunch of people witnessing the same thing remember it totally differently. And even our most cherished
we have incorporated each other's childhoods into our own personal
our most
memories.
Cherished personal memories may be cobbled together and borrowed from siblings, friends, things that did happen are embellished. So, all of the things that we cherish, a lot of the family stories have now, gained sort of mythic status, but that's because that's the way we need them to be, I think, rather than that is the way they necessarily were. It's not that they're total lies, but they've been
Yeah,
embellished.
I think because I've been thinking about this, and I think what happens is our brain records emotions, and that in ensuing years we fill in facts to support the emotions more than the facts remind us of how we felt at the time. I mean, I think that what we remember is how we feel.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But did you know this from the book? We, humans, choke to death more easily than any other mammal. Other mammals, all mammalia, does not have the problem that we do with choking. So this is a design flaw in us. And it comes from evolution of our heads getting so damn big to keep our big
And
head.
our esophagus not
To
getting
keep our big
correspondingly bigger.
Well, no, it says to keep our big heads upright, our necks became longer and more centered under the skull. And this had the happy effect of allowing us to speak, I guess. I'm sure he goes into it. And before our heads had moved in the way they had, I guess speech would have been difficult. Song would have been difficult. But unfortunately, it also made our airwaves much more vulnerable to accidental blockages of by food. I mean, I'm sure it's a whole chapter, but I thought, wow. And of course, the other.
Well, so let's put in a plug at the moment for the good old Heimlich maneuver, which everybody should really know, and which honestly is easily done and works. And you can save lives that way.
Yeah.
So you just put your arm around someone and from behind in a big bear hug right under their rib cage and a strong in and up, and does it pop food out?
Yeah, and then it pops the food out. I just hope that if I'm ever choking, there's someone around who knows it. You can attempt to self Heimlich yourself, and it's probably a lot harder to do. Here's another.
Well, we've talked about this. You have to throw yourself on the ground.
I think you throw yourself on a chair back, on something that's going to give you that.
Well, somebody decided that the proper way to do it, the only way to get the proper force if you're doing it yourself is to just literally allow yourself to face plant on the ground.
I don't know,
without catching yourself.
No, wouldn't you face plant though? But make sure that your fist was gonna, hit you in the right place when you went down.
Well, no, you aren't falling on your fist. You're just letting the fall itself do the work. You aren't falling on your own fist.
Well, I think that would make it better, but what do I hope to never have to test this out. Also,
no, I don't either. I'll run outside and point at my throat. I'm in Chicago.
Okay, and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that this book says that I found fascinating. Quote, a significant part of everything we see is actually imagined. What? Now, I can't get into the total science here, but it has something to do with the way our eyes are constructed.
And then our brain fills in the details,
that our vision is obstructed by tangles of nerves and blood vessels inside our eyes. And it also has to do with where the rods and cones that do it's much more complicated. But our eyes do also have a literal blind spot, a goodly chunk of space that doesn't have any of the rods or cones where the optic nerve exits the eye. It creates a total blind spot in that part of what should be our field of vision. And we are not in any way aware of this blind spot because, as Susan said,
our brain colors it in.
right. It's actually the brain says, well, I would think that would be this and that, and colors it in. But the fact is you're not seeing it. And the brain, I
it
suppose,
just continues the lines and it just continues the picture. But yeah, your brain's filling it in. I think that that makes total sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad it does. Okay. We have a call. Caller, go ahead, please. Hello? God, you sound worse than I do. The call's not coming through.
Yeah, this isn't just me. I'm not hearing this, right?
No, none of us are hearing this.
No, okay.
I'm sorry, caller. It's totally broken up. Ain't working. He also goes on to say that in Shakespeare's time, when he ate an apple or any fruit, it did not taste like it tastes to us. In fact, he says the fruits that Shakespeare ate were, for the most part, probably no sweeter than the modern carrot. What?
Except for bananas.
Well,
Bananas were far sweeter than they are now. But that original banana died out, and this is a replacement banana. But bananas actually used to taste like candy banana, which to me doesn't taste like banana at all.
Well, there are other bananas. If you go to South America, you find some extraordinary bananas, plantains and things like that. Just like they've got better potatoes. God, the Idaho potato that we think of as the potato is like the least interesting tuber of all time. And there's fascinating potatoes. But, big business didn't, for whatever reason, decide that this is the one we're going to say is the potato.
But getting back to things not tasting the same in Shakespeare's time as they do now, that's because of what was it? Mendel? Was he the pea guy? Was he the guy that
changing? They started grafting and stuff like that.
We learned how to graft.
Okay, we have two
so
callers.
That now you can.
Right.
I think about 100 years ago, you could honestly buy an apple tree that they had grafted 4 different or 5 different varieties on, and so one tree would produce all these different apples.
Well, our produce now has been made much more sugary than it was, so we'll like it, and it's much less nutritious than it was. Also that we'll buy it. And they hook you because we love sugar. But there's far fewer nutrients in. Shakespeare had better nutritious fruit. It just didn't taste as sugary good. We have 2 callers, so let's get people in here. Hello, caller. Go ahead, please. Oh, damn. I don't know what's wrong. We can't hear you. You're breaking up. I don't know if okay, we gotta let you go. I'm sorry. Let's see if the other caller sounds like that. It's on our end, which would be such a shock. Second caller? Hello?
Unfortunately, that caller breaking up puts me on first.
You sound just fine, Clarence.
That's because I'm on that old-fashioned thing called the landline.
Oh,
I know. Me too.
2 things. The choking. That made me think that if we choke more, and that because our heads are bigger and it helps us with our speech. Gotta have to avoid eating your words. So,
all right.
That's the joke.
That was a joke.
Okay.
That was a joke.
The blind spot thing. There's something cool that you can do and see your, not see your blind spot, but not see your blind spot, or however that goes. If you stick your an arm out and keep your eyes forward and slowly, like I use my right arm, and slowly move your arm to the right, eventually your hand will disappear. Don't follow, just stay looking forward, and like your hand will disappear. And you'll be able to move your fingers and stuff and not see your hand attached to your arm. It's kind of a cool thing, and that's where your blind spot is.
You're absolutely right. I'm doing it now. I can see my arm, but not my hand. And if I stick my fingers a little bit back in the frame, then I can see them. But you're right. Yeah. It just disappears at the end of my arm.
Yeah, that's your blind spot.
Apparently.
Kind of cool to do.
Yeah, but doesn't our brain put our hand there?
Oh, I think because it's attached to your body. You know what I mean? So your brain kind of knows it's there, but you can't see it. So it's not going to reform a hand. And that's, it's only, what is it, 20% of the stuff is filled in? So it's not within that 20%.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And the fact that almost everything you see is an illusion. Color is an illusion. It's created by your brain. It's all, because different animals see different colors, and the light spectrum is enormous. Somebody put it this way, that what we see was as if there was a burqa that covered the universe. You know what I mean? That little slit of the spectrum that covered our galaxy. That little slit of light is what we see. We see nothing that's practically nothing that's actually
there. Well, just think about all the stuff that lives in the air.
Mm-hmm.
That's all around us, and on our body. I mean, that we just don't see, and in our beds. All this stuff that we don't see. We are surrounded by it.
Yeah, and we're practically blind to it.
Right.
That's why they use infrared and and all that stuff and those types of light waves to see the universe. Because we can't see it with the naked eye.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So that I use my nerdy side and my comedian side. So I'm done.
Good for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you. Bye. And I'm glad actually Clarence's call made it clear that wasn't our problem.
No, it was a cell phone issue.
Okay.
I think.
Jonathan, who listens to the program a lot, said, "Prime example that you never know what you'll hear on the Lynn Cullen show." And then he said, Lynn Cullen on October 15th, 2019 said this: "The least interesting tuber of all time." Yeah.
Well, we've had many conversations late into the night about tubers we've met that we thought were far more interesting.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, the tubers there's some wondrous tubers, I'm just saying. Hey, I came across this story, and I want to share it with everybody. It's so outrageous. This was in the Washington Post. I don't know what we've come to, but there was a family from the United Kingdom, actually two families, two couples, they had 3 young children, one very, very young. And they were in Western Canada having a holiday, and actually near Vancouver. And they say that there was the road all of a sudden was blocked by a rather large animal, and they made an unexpected detour. They pulled around and found themselves on a strange road. And then they found flashing lights in their rear view mirror. And they were pulled over by Americans from the Department of Homeland Security. And what happened to these people is unbelievable. They were, all of them, including a 3-month-old child, ended up detained. Actually, I think they still are detained. So when did this happen? This happened October 3rd. So for the last almost 2 weeks, they have been in custody. They now have an attorney trying to get them out. Why should this be? U.S. Customs and Border Protection could not be reached for comment. Blah, blah, blah. They were taken to some place where they were given those, metallic blankets. The women were separated from the men. They were told you crossed an international border, and that was it. And they said, well, can't we just turn around? And no way. The woman and her baby were put in a very cold cell. And you hear this. This is one of their tactics that they do to all the poor guys coming across the southern border, right? They call these cells ice boxes.
And they're putting a baby in there.
They put a baby in there. They were issued those thin metal-like blankets. And they were left in the cell the entire day with no information, no way to call home to their family, no idea what was going to happen. Her son, the baby, had to sleep on this disgusting floor. Then they ended up being pulled out and taken to an airport. And they thought, thank God this is ending. But no. They were transported to Pennsylvania, to the Burke's Family Residential Center that's called the Baby Jail. And they arrived there on October 5th. And even the detention center there said, this is the first time we've had a child under the age of 1 in this facility for a long time. So all of these people are still sitting there.
Well, for heaven's sakes.
She said she had to bathe her son in a bathtub that was provided that was filthy dirty. Her son was left without clothing, blankets, or bibs. The blankets and sheets have a disgusting smell. I cannot use them to wrap my baby for fear that they have not been washed. The baby woke up on Friday with his left eye swollen and teary and his skin rough and blotchy. And the officials at told her that, yes, he is a bit young to be here, and if you want, you can sign papers allowing him to be separated from you, and we'll take him to a better place.
I mean, this is like real concentration camp stuff.
They didn't do anything.
They stepped foot on the wrong side.
Somehow they got finally to somebody who then got the Washington Post to write about it. As soon as they were able to get in touch with their embassy, her son was given a playpen, and they were told they'd be going home in the near future. Meanwhile, it's unclear that they have been allowed to go home. And their attorney said emotionally and psychologically they are destroyed. There's no way to comprehend how this happened. Yeah, there is. This is the United States of America under Donald Trump's administration. I mean, they do
their official policy.
They do this to brown people all the time. Now, this family's getting attention because they weren't trying to come in. They just wandered in from our northern border and were still treated by the book, which is they were terrorized. Boy, what has become of us? Anyway, that was that's my last story.
I thought you were going for something lighthearted, and
I'm sorry, I did not have. I did not have.
No, but okay. So I actually started this morning this way with my visiting sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and said, I don't know why we aren't out in the streets.
Yeah. Well, I don't either.
Well, now I'm not, because I'm hoping that Congress is actually going to do something precipitously, and there's going to be enough people talking that something might actually happen.
To get the Republicans in the Senate on board, they've got to find something so egregious. I think, listen, they will.
I think Syria should be something so egregious. I think leaving our nuclear weapons now in enemy hands should be something so egregious.
Enemy?
Here, by the way, here's all my nuclear weapons. Would you just watch those for me?
The Turks are our allies, Susan.
Yeah, right.
I know. All right. Well, just the latest report on the decline and fall of the United States of America. Thank you, Suze, for helping me through this. Appreciate it.
Okay, you sound great. Go to bed. Eat some honey and tea.
I've been eating honey and tea. This bug just won't vacate the premises. Okay.
All right. Well, eventually it will. Okay, goodbye. Feel better.
I will. See ya. Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.